If I were to ask you who your top two or three competitors are, chances are pretty good you'd think of two or three other companies or other brands. But there's all sorts of things, of course, that we're competing with in the B2B marketplace beyond simply other companies that offer similar solutions. One of the things we've talked about for years is that in many ways our number one competitor is good enough. That's the situation where your customers will essentially look you right in the eye and agree that your solution is better, but nonetheless opt for a different course of action or a different provider simply because their solution, while not as good as yours, was in fact good enough. And so the answer there is to spend some time helping your customer understand sort of what the incremental value of that differential sort of performance is in terms of how that helps them avoid a cost or mitigate risk in ways they haven't fully appreciated. More recently, we've talked about your number one competitor being essentially status quo or indecision, the fact that your customer just kind of gets stuck in sort of the fear of making a bad choice, so they choose not to choose. And I think that's absolutely true. But there's a flavor of this indecision that I think is especially important to understand because it opens up a window to a completely new set of solutions that we lay out in the Framemaking Sale. Because what we're finding really now in many ways is that if not your number one competitor, then certainly your number one unaddressed competitor may in fact be your customer's memory. Now, what do I mean by that? Essentially, it's their memory of the last time they tried to buy not your solution, but a solution like yours. And they're sort of going through the mental sort of, recall of who all needs to be involved and how that went last time and what happened when we tried to make a big collective decision just 6 months ago. And it was awful. And frankly, I don't want to do that again, not just with that company, but with any company. And granted, companies still have to make large scale decisions, but I think many of them would like to make as few of them as possible, just given the amount of mental energy and time and effort and opportunity it costs to make a large decision, let alone a large purchase decision. In fact, we see this. I've seen this over the years, and it's steadily getting worse as I've talked to leaders around the world, and I've asked them simply, think back to the last time you made a purchase decision inside your own organization with your colleagues, and think about one word, one adjective that would describe that entire process from beginning to end. And I have yet to hear a single positive word after asking literally tens of thousands of people that question. It's always long, hard, frustrating, awful. Someone said landmine. I said, that's not an adjective. So he said landmine-ish. And that became my word for the year for a while. But there's one particularly memorable version of this exercise that I ran in Chicago with a bunch of chief marketing officers where there was a head of marketing who had spent about the last 2 years making a decision on a new CRM system. And we've all kind of been there and we know how hard that decision is in terms of replacement, everything else, all the different considerations involved in a CRM decision. And you know what her word was? And thinking back to her 2-year journey and making that decision, her word was, I never want to do that again. All one word, all jammed together. And you could see in her eyes as she said that word that she was reliving all of that pain, all of that frustration, and she legitimately never wanted to do that again. Now, I suppose if you're the incumbent, maybe that's not so bad, but if you're trying to expand that relationship over time, you're right back to where you started from with I never want to do that again. But I think it raises a really important question, which is what do you do when the number one word that your customer thinks about, not in buying your solution, but a solution like yours, is I never want to do that again. And in many ways, what that tells us is something profoundly important, which is in many ways, our number one competitor today isn't the competition. It isn't good enough. It isn't status quo. It's our customer's memory of the time when they went through a similar decision in the recent past. And as you walk into that office of your customer, whether it's figuratively or literally, and have a conversation, know that that memory is sitting right next to you and having a conversation at the same time. And as we think about sort of what do we need to do to compete against our customer's memory, that opens up this door to, or this window into this opportunity of thinking about how can I help them realize not that my solution is different, but this decision journey will be different. It will be easier. You'll feel more empowered. I can help guide you through this process in ways that will alleviate some of that pain. And working with other customers like you, one of the ways that we found to make this decision actually go a lot easier that even surprised us was X. And if we can actually sort of take our customer by the hand, figuratively, not literally, because that'd be weird, and guide them, be their Sherpa, be their coach through this buying journey, maybe we could show them, maybe we could demonstrate them, maybe we could actually sort of work with them in a new reality of like, I never want to do that again, but this time actually it wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll do it again, just not with anybody, just with you. And that's how you turn a stalled deal into a real deal, and a real deal into an expanded deal over time, is to be the one sales professional, the one sales team that shows up in a way that helps your customer realize, I never want to do that again, but maybe I can do it this time.